So the process started with Sister Carol sending me an email back in December and saying, how do you feel about having a Congolese speaker and inviting Congolese brethren to come to the Bible school this year? And we just thought it was a tremendous idea, and we're so glad to have you all with us this week. I heard your first classes went very well. I did, however, hear that from Brother Steve Smith, who didn't know a word you were saying, but he said it went very, very well. And I'm sure that it did. So in the process of putting our plans together for the Bible school, I thought to myself, well, if the Congolese brethren are coming, and of course we had Brother Jean-Claude and the Ascendees in our ecclesia, they're still in our ecclesia. Of course, Jean-Claude is gone, with us for many years, and Jean-Claude was not shy telling me the stories of what it meant that he went through to get here to America. So I thought, well, we ought to have a presentation that talks about everything that it's taken. It's a fascinating story. It is a combination of a horrible story, really, in many respects, and a beautiful story at the same time. To consider what so many of these Congolese brethren have gone through, and yet in the process of going through it, even in the darkest of times, they found the true word of truth. And that true word of truth has both helped them, guided them, and brought them to this place. So as the brother pointed out last night, in every cloud there's a silver lining, even in the darkest of times. And so we want to tell that story this evening, and Brother Innocent and anybody else that wants to ask questions as we go along, or let's save the questions until later on in the period. But if you want to add something to it, or certainly if the Congolese brethren want to add something to it, please let us know. Brother Dennis was just about to volunteer to run around with a handheld mic to pass it around at the appropriate time. So that's what we're going to do this evening. We've got a little slide that shows basically what we're going to talk about. But I'd like to, first off, just talk about, for ourselves in Boston, how it started. So for us, it started with a letter from this gentleman right here. The letter itself actually has an interesting story in that, of course, in the Congo, they don't speak English. They speak several languages. How many can you speak? 5? 6? Sorry, I cut him one short. He's adding English in now. But they couldn't speak English. So we got this letter in Boston. And what happened was Jean-Claude had written the letter, and I think it went to CBM, if I'm correct, and it traveled around, and it was in French. And they couldn't find anybody that could speak French until it finally ended up in the hand of a brother by the name of Alan Thomas. And Alan actually used to be a member of Boston, so he translated it. And when he translated it, he realized that it was supposed to come to us. So he sent it to us. It was back in 2005, and it was an introduction letter that he had written, that he's now in America, and he's now living in Revere, and he's now looking, and explaining what he went through, and he was now looking for his Christadelphian family. And so we got the letter, and we were like, wow, what do we do with this? So one Sunday we called him up. And it was an interesting phone call. I know that Brother Jim Boyko was there. Who else was with us, Jim? Do you remember? Andrew Taberner? Yeah. Andrew doesn't speak French either. And Jim's French is no good. I don't know how to say that in French. No bon? No bon? Pas bon. And my French is what I just proved. So we called him up and had this challenging conversation, but Jean-Claude spoke just a slight bit of English. Very, very, very slight at the time. And so we tried to communicate back and forth, where are you, what do you need? And the one question he could answer is, what do you need? And so it was really the end of the conversation, and we said, so what do you need? And he said in perfect English, big screen TV. So we didn't have a big screen TV, but it turns out they needed a lot more than a big screen TV. And it also turns out that we needed them. And really that's what has happened with the Congolese brethren coming to America. They come here with a great deal of needs, but they are providing in such incredible benefit to what we need. We need purpose and we need reason. And they provided it for us. And we need love, and we need to understand that our life is easy compared to many, and we should appreciate what we have. And that, for me, is what the Congolese brethren had brought to us. And moving forward, we're going to need each other as well. We're going to need to be able to strengthen each other. We're going to be able to love each other, to understand each other, and to be part of this one unified, incredible family. And we'll talk about the very important way in which we are most assuredly unified when we come from such different places. So the Bembalises became a part of our ecclesia. They've been a part of, Justine's been with us now for, I think it's 17 years, Justine, have I got that right? Yeah, 17 years. And they're fully acclimated into America, which means they have to work for a living and all that kind of stuff, like the rest of us. And they have a beautiful house in Randolph, and their family is beautiful as well. So, to give you a background of some things about the Congo, Brother Innocent gave me this picture, and that's about, when you look at that section there, that's about the size of the Congo. It's a big place. That's also, for the most part, where Congolese refugees in America end up. They actually end up in 3 places, correct? They ended up in the United States, Canada, for the most part, and Australia. Yeah, and meanwhile, the Iranian brethren, which I think Carol talked about in Sister's Tea today, have ended up in England, and are basically doing the same thing in England, reinvigorating the Christadelphian community. So these are the things we want to talk about. How did this come to be? How has their faith helped them through their incredible trials? And what more can we do for each other? So here's the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to read together. We're just going to give you a little background to the Congo, a little background to the history of the Congo, and then get into what Brother Innocent calls the 3 phases of what happened in the Congo that caused so many Congolese brethren to flee, and the incredible perils of what it means to flee, and then what it means to be in a refugee camp, and what it means to try to get out of the refugee camp and come to America. Many of the stories are the same, and many of the stories are very, very unique. It's located in the heart of Central Africa. It's the country that was at one time called Zaire. When I was growing up, it was known as Zaire. It's the 2nd largest country by land area in Africa and the 11th largest country in the world. So it's a very, very big place. The people of the DRC represent over 200 ethnic groups with nearly 250 languages and dialects spoken throughout the country. It's very much a group kind of, this people, of course they're in the African jungle, so it's not a country that necessarily is, culturally completely unified. It's been very hard to unify because of the way it is. Its capital is Kinshasa. Have you ever been to Kinshasa? How do you say it? Kinshasa. Kinshasa. It's the 3rd largest city in Africa, and it's also the 2nd largest French-speaking country in the world. French-speaking city in the world. Anybody want to guess what the 1st largest French-speaking city in the world is? It is literally dominated by the Congo River, and the Congo River flows from the bottom right out into the Atlantic, not the other way around, which is the way I thought it flowed. It's among the most resourceful countries in the planet, with an abundance of gold, tantalum, tungsten, and tin, and that's one of its biggest benefits and one of its biggest problems is its natural resources. It's been a historical problem in the country because natural resources mean money, and money means exploitation, basically. Yet it continues to be an extremely poor population and is a country of extraordinary beauty. See what I mean? Anybody know what that is? That's Kinshasa? It's a good guess? Yeah, probably, yeah. They have an area known as I guess it's known as the Pink Mountains with incredible pink flowers. It is quintessential Africa, the stuff that we considered Africa when we were kids. We learned about the hippo today. It's a country of extraordinary beauty and unending turmoil. At one point, Time magazine put out a magazine cover that said it was the most violent place on earth, the Democratic Republic of Congo, because of the violence that was taking place there during one of the civil wars. So what I'd like to do is just to give you a little bit of history, a very little bit of history. Obviously, there was quite a bit of the slave trade in the 16th and 17th centuries. But again, the Congo is full of natural resources. And when there's natural resources, there's exploitation. And what happened was, at the turn of late 19th century, moving into 20th century, Belgium, who was it that took over that area that they gave it to Leopold? Bismarck? The Chancellor, okay, so, Bismarck. Yeah, Bismarck. So Bismarck owned the area. Is your microphone turned on? I just want to make sure it's turned on. Okay. There we go. Now they can hear you. Yeah. So Bismarck, who was the Chancellor of Germany, took over the area, although they didn't really know the area well. And he gave it to his nephew, who was this gentleman, King Leopold of Belgium. And Leopold declared this area his. Now, the fact that there were already people living there didn't make a difference to Leopold, because there was gold and diamonds and all the rest of it. So he took over the area, and he declared it the Congo Free State. But it was anything but free. Leopold exploited the country and killed 2 million people, it's estimated.
Yeah, those are just estimation, though there are no official figures.
Yeah. And we're talking about a time from 1885 to 1908, he killed over 2 million people through violence, through exploitation, through overwork, through whatever he could do. He brought in three things. He's the one that brought in the French language. He's why so many people in the Congo, like everybody in the Congo, can speak French, because he was from Belgium and Belgium speaks French. He brought in the Catholic Church missionaries, and the Catholic Church, my understanding is the dominant church in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's actually part of the culture, more or less. They run the hospitals and the schools and all of that. And of course, he brought in oppressive, brutal cruelty. So oppressive and brutal that in 1908, Belgium basically bought it back from him to get him away from it. He had already made his money, I'm sure. If you remember about the Congo, a story, I didn't put the slide up there, but the Congo is where Stanley did his explorations. Remember the old story about Dr. Livingston, I presume, with Livingston and Stanley? Well, he was the one that mapped out the Congo, and then it ended up in Leopold's hand, and Leopold said, wow, I can make money off of this. So it ends up in 1908 in the Belgian government, and they brought to the Congo somewhat less oppression, but no reform and no political sovereignty. And they basically oversaw the country from 1908 to 1960. In 1960, you had what's known as the Congo crisis. Basically, the people of the Congo were tired of being ruled by another country. And of course, the Belgian government did nothing to raise up the education level of any of that kind of stuff of the people in the Congo. And you can tell this better than I can, but as of 1960, there was basically a revolution, or how would you describe it?
Yeah, okay. Their politics was to keep the Congolese people in the dark. They did not open schools nor universities. They just wanted to keep them in the dark so that they keep exploiting the country.
Yep.
Yeah, so in 1960, that's when some of those who were the elite of the Congolese people, they rose up. So they fought the Belgians and they obtained the independence of Congo in 1960.
So how long did this really revolution, how long did it take? Was it within a year that they rose up?
10 years.
10 years.
From 1950 to 1960.
All the way from 1950 to 1960s. And as of 1960, they basically were handed over the country, more or less. And the gentleman who was sort of the leader of it was a gentleman by the name of Joseph Mobutu. And is he the one that gave it the name the Democratic Republic of Congo? Or was he the one that gave it the name Zaire?
He gave the name Zaire.
Yeah, there we go, okay. So this is Joseph Mobutu, also known as Mobutu Sese Seko. He changed his name, I think after he became, was it president?
Yeah, in 1965.
Okay. He changed the name to Zaire, and it was a period of relative stability. There was no civil wars, there was no tribal wars, none of that kind of stuff, correct?
Yeah.
However, there was something else.
Yeah, during the 32 years he was in power. Here in America, you used to have only one president, 80 years
Right.
maximum.
Right.
He was there for 32 years. Yeah, I was born myself. I grew up until I reached the age of 19. He was still the president.
So you had one president for your whole childhood and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, yeah.
My whole first 19 years of my life,
Yeah.
he's the only president I've known. Yeah, so up to 1997, that's when he was ousted. Yeah, because people were tired of his authoritarian regime. So yeah, there was a rebellion which rose up and they ousted him.
And did he do any work to improve the education level, the economic level of the people in the country, or did he just basically exploit?
Education, yes,
Okay.
definitely. Today, if we have universities and schools,
Yep.
they all came during the 32 years when he was in power.
Okay.
Yeah. Because during the Belgian time, they only built some elementary school.
Right.
No one could reach the level of high
Of a high school?
high school, no.
You weren't even allowed to reach the level of high school?
Yeah, you could go up to elementary level or middle school, that's all.
Yeah. Keep them ignorant. Yeah. So he was in power until 1997. There was a lot of corruption. Again, money creates exploitation, it creates corruption. Wealth does anyway. So then there is what Brother Innocent calls the first phase one of the first Congo War, starting in 1996. And it says, in October of 1996, a rebellion broke out in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This is actually from Jean-Claude, led by the AFL, the Alliance of, or is this from you? Liberation Forces.
Yep.
In a span of 8 months, the AFL managed to conquer the whole country. As a result, the dictator and his cronies fled the country. So the first phase of the war resulted in over 11,000 deaths and 5,000 people asking refugee in neighboring countries, Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, and 2.6 million internally displaced. So it was a major upheaval, this new war. And it brought an unstable alliance, and it brought a new president. And that new president's name, Laurent Désiré Kabila. He came in 1997. He was not around for long. He had an unstable government. He did change the name back from Zaire to the Democratic Republic of Congo. But he was gone quickly. In 1998, you had phase 2 of the Second Congo War. Barely a year in power, the new regime was being rocked by internal wranglings due to disagreements in power sharing. It happens all the time. Brother Rich teaches classes on it all the time. In August 1998, the army was split into 2 groups, one group loyal to the then president and the other behind a renegade army commander. The latter launches a second rebellion, as usual, in the east. And that's important where it says, as usual in the east, because many of our Congo brethren are from that eastern section of the Congo, right? That's where the Bembe tribe live. Yep. And many of who we have are Bembes. And the country divided into two halves, one half the west under control of the central government in Kinshasa, the capital city, and the other half, the east, under the grip of the rebels. The second phase of war in Congo causes another wave of immigration of hundreds of thousands of population to neighboring countries. The situation in refugee camps become even worse with additional numbers flowing in. Some refugees fled, they had had enough and started leaving the camps to the other countries so far as South Africa. So you would flee to a refugee camp, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, and you get to a refugee camp and you say, this is no way to live, and so then you flee the refugee camp. That's what happened to Brother Innocent. The war raged on for 5 years, and there was a standoff. Thanks to the African Union, the two warring parties signed peace agreements in April of 2003. And the second Congo war, as bad as the first one, the second one was far worse, if you can measure these terrible events by better or worse. It was much more violent. I think it was much more tribal. Is that correct?
Yes. First of all, the first phase lasted only maybe 1 year. This one took about 5 years.
Yep.
Yeah. And this was far the worst because the casualties, the deaths, people who fled the countries, the numbers, there are no official numbers given in such a situation. People were scattered in all neighboring countries.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Just an incredible situation.
Yeah, an incredible.
And that, again, as you see, in April 2003, some sort of peace had to come of some kind. So in 1998 to 2003, the second phase of the war brought the assassination of Laurent Kabila, an overwhelming tribal warfare, and it brought in this gentleman, Joseph Kabila. And there's a reason why you see the name Kabila, and that's because this gentleman is the son of Laurent.
Yes.
So they assassinated Laurent, and the son came in. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. They assassinated the father, and the son came in. Now, if you know your history, and Brother Richie here, right? So Brother Richie, if they assassinate the father and the son comes in, who assassinates the father? Somebody said it. Well, it can't be proved, but you don't assassinate the father and put the son in charge unless you're the one that assassinates the father, basically. So Joseph Kabila came into power. And that's really more or less where the country is sitting today. That's phase 3. During the second phase of the war, several militia groups sprang up throughout the area controlled by rebels. The militia groups were mainly ethnic fighters purporting to defend themselves against what they termed as invaders. Given the huge size of the country, the incapacity of neither the government nor the rebels to exercise authority over the totality of their representative territories, the ethnic militias took advantage of the vacuum and started establishing their rule of the jungle. They were unruly and disorganized. They were killing, extorting, and looting properties from villages. Inter-ethnic conflicts became the norm, and raping as one way of humiliating the opponents. Warlords became like semi-gods. Since those ethnic militias were not recognized, they were left out of negotiations of peace agreements signed to end the second phase of the war. Emboldened by their access to several mineral resources, there's the power, they are still very active in controlling many areas to this very day. So they made a peace agreement, but they didn't include big factions of the people that were doing the fighting, because they didn't recognize who they were. So these people just continue to do what they do, and it's always for the same thing, it's always for the resources, because the resources give you money. Makes perfect sense, but it's a horrible story. So this country has been through slavery, been through Leopold, been through the closed eyes of the Belgian country, been through corrupt politicians, been through violent militias. All this going on again and again and again in one of the most beautiful and one of the most important areas in the entire world. So today, they recently had, and I'm not sure what the year is, that they had the peaceful transition power to this gentleman, maybe 3 years ago?
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 years ago.
And how do you say his name?
Felix Tshisekedi.
You heard it. But the country, it's not like the country's now stable. And that's actually part of the refugee story, which we'll get to in just one second. The country is certainly not stable, even though this gentleman is in power, because you have all these warlords reigning over certain areas. They have ongoing violence, poverty, hunger, and displacement. In 2016 alone, it's reported that 93,000 people fled the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is still an unstable, unsafe, and desperate country. And that's part of why they can't go back, especially in the East. It's one of the most unstable areas even to this day, yes?
Yep.
So this is some of the areas where they fled. And when you flee, and this might sound strange to our Congolese brothers and sisters, what do you mean you don't know what it means to flee? Well, we've never had to do it. When you flee, you basically take what you can fit on, in this case, almost on the top of your head, and out the door you go, and off you go. Sister Justine tells the story. Her situation was Jean-Claude was arrested, and they said, Jean-Claude said to her, you got to go. And understand, when they said, you got to go, she was a young mother with 4 very young children. And they walked out the door, and they walked into the jungle. And we're not talking about Mount Monadnock. We're talking about the African jungle. Because you were going to die if you stayed, and you might get killed if you go. So they walked into the African jungle with lions and like snakes and killer everything all over the place. And they didn't know where they were going, but there were other people going east. And so I guess we'll go east. And that's what it means to flee. You have nothing. You leave with nothing, and off you go. And you end up in a refugee camp. The UN has an agreement with the countries around the Congo to gather these refugee camps. In some cases, the refugee camps, in most cases, the refugee camps is worse than being on your own. This is, I believe Jean-Claude wrote this, right? On January 1st, 1999, a massacre occurred in Makubala in the Fiji zone of RDC. Several members of the Bembe tribe were killed by the Mai Mai forces. Many of our brethren here today are part of the Bembe tribe. Many members of our church, including my parents, were killed, and our church was burned to the ground because they claimed we were helping the enemy penetrate the Congo territories. Since then, I've been persecuted, chased, and treated like an undesirable by the Mai Mai group. In addition, they have burned the fields of the Bembe tribes and killed many of our people. On July 30th, 1999, I fled the DRC, or whatever, to avoid being charged with the crime of sedition. I had to cross Lake Tanganyika to something in Tanzania in order to get to Mozambique. I arrived at the refugee camp in Mozambique on August 5th, 1999, and the refugee camp he arrived in was not the refugee camp that Justine and the kids were in. They were in a different refugee camp. And I'd like you to explain what happens when you get to the refugee camp, if you don't mind.
Yeah, once you cross the border, you enter in that other country, so you have to surrender to the authority to say that you are a refugee, because otherwise they will ask you a passport and visa. But you say, I have none of those. I've come here as a refugee because I'm fearing for my life. Once you are registered with the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, that's the UN agency that takes care of the refugee all over the world, you are given plastic sheltering or a tent like this one, which has a lifespan of 3 to 6 months. Due to being exposed to the sun and the rain in Africa, this plastic sheltering has the lifespan of, let's say, 6 months only. And you can imagine this small structure here, a family of 7, 8, or 9, you are all bundled in that one.
Let me make one comment. When he says 6 months, that's the only one you get.
Yeah, you will not get another one. Once this is worn out, you are on your own. So all you have to do is now to figure out how you will make a shelter. Maybe you go out in the forest, you cut trees, and you make a hut, a house like that one with, you put the grass on the
Top.
on the top.
Yeah.
And life continues like that.
Right.
So that's how it is in refugees. So when you see things like this, these have just arrived maybe within the last 2 or 3 months. Because after 6 months, you will not see even all this structure again. They are all worn out completely.
So I believe this picture, Ascendi, you took this picture, right? Yeah. And you took it while you were there, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And which one is yours? Take your pick. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a remarkable way to have to survive.
Yeah.
And so you end up in a refugee camp, and
one thing I would like to add,
Yeah.
as you can see how the place is overcrowded. So in terms of maybe bathroom and toilets, they will maybe make a distance of 500 feet or half a mile. That's where they put a block of toilets.
Okay.
So you have to walk maybe 300 feet or 500 feet to reach the toilet. Even if at night you want to get relieved, you have to walk that distance. Yeah. So that's how it is in the camp.
Does anybody want to add anything to that? Justine?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Justine.
It was a very difficult moment when you can see every refugee for any country, like especially African, our Congolese to be here. It was a very difficult moment to everybody to be here. So like a brother just said about the camp, is true. The tent, like you said, it was for one tent, you can be 10 people, 11 people, no water. Sometimes for £1, you can eat 10 people. For 1 week, it was very difficult. So just I can say, if you see people, they are here, it was very hard moment.
Yeah.
So this exactly, like you put when I see this, is exactly, I was the same thing like that there.
Yeah.
There was no man, and I go by myself, I go. So it was no easy.
Yeah. Sandy.
All right. This is our opportunity to talk to. As my brother Baruani just come to say that everything is correct. The only one things I want to add is like, in all that around you talking about all that situation, bad situation you're talking about our country, till now, it's already killed 12 million people already died.
Right.
So it's just like, there we call country, here we call states. In Africa, in some countries, you can find that amount of people, like 12 million people. So it's like all states, you found everybody's dead. So until now, the situation is still bad and bad. Those are like things for the past. If you can go on Google right now, it was a big disaster again. They chased all the UN people who was there to save us. They were there like 20 years. They are already there, so they didn't do nothing until people they get tired to chase them away. Today they did that. We saw that, they sent us some pictures. I can show them, but anyone who need it, you can see me and I can show what happened just today. So I can say that just pray for Congolese people all over the year. Even us, we just survive because we are here. But we left our parents my dad, my mom, my sisters. So in my family we are like 11 people. My wife is the same thing, but right now I'm only alone in America. So all of them, they are there, they suffer, some they are in the refugee camp like that situation. There are many things you can add, but that is enough for now. If someone can add, yeah, you can mic. Thank you.
I certainly wouldn't want to paint the picture that life is now good in the Congo, not by any stretch of the imagination. It is not. It is not, nor is it any better in the refugee camps. This is still going on to this day. I pulled this off of a report from 2015. At the end of 2015, the Democratic Republic of Refugees live scattered among the Republic of Congo, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Zambia, and Malawi. 73% of the Congolese refugees are under the age of 25. And we were talking about this last night. You see many families in refugee camps where it's the older children who are taking care of the younger children because the parents are dead. It's very common in the refugee camps, true? Yeah. Living conditions for most of the refugees in host countries is harsh, unhealthy, and unsafe, as he's proven just by the toiletries alone. Many refugees suffer from high degrees of trauma from exposure to violence. Certainly, Justine and the others know about that. Torture and assault and require professional medical attention. I remember when Angie got here, she needed major medical attention because she had parasites throughout her entire body. Congolese refugees face limited employment opportunities in many host countries, according to European resettlement networks. Malawi, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia have imposed restrictions to prevent Congolese refugees from obtaining work. Innocent says the unemployment rate is 95% in a refugee camp. You cannot go further than, would you say, a 5-mile radius outside the camp?
Yeah, in most countries, refugee camp is a restricted area. So as a refugee, you are not supposed to go 5 miles beyond the confines of the refugee camp. Yeah, that's one. Meaning, if you are looking for employment, you're supposed to look for it within the camp, not outside the camp.
Right.
Yeah. And chances to get employment within the camp are very slim because those humanitarian organizations working in the camp have very limited numbers of job opportunities. So people who are employed in camp are less than 5% of the whole population.
Right.
Yeah, meaning unemployment is 95%.
Talk about the 3 things that can happen to you when you become a refugee, the repatriation and the others.
Yeah, they call that the refugee solution.
Okay.
Yeah. So according to the UN, there are 3 basic solutions for a refugee. One is repatriation.
Just try this closer as both, just see if this is slow.
Sure.
Just because it's so high, it's on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm talking about the solution, as they call it, permanent solution for a refugee to get out of the refugee status. Number 1 is repatriation, meaning they take you back to your home country. But only if the conditions or the situation there has improved and it is safe for you to return. If it's not safe, they cannot take you back there. In that case, the second solution they will try to look at is integration. In that country, your country of asylum, they try to see if you can become citizen of that. For instance, those of us who are refugees in Mozambique, Tanzania, Burundi, and so on, meaning now you can become citizen of that country. But that solution also has been proved very difficult because those countries are also poor countries and they are struggling with their own population. So they do not want to take any additional numbers to them. Additional numbers means additional problems to them.
Right.
And the last solution, after those 2 cannot work for you, the remaining solution is resettlement. So now the UN tried to find another country that is willing to take you, to accept you. That's when now you can see most of us here in America, in Canada, and in Australia.
So, you know, we obviously see a lot of Bembes, and one of the reasons we see a lot of Bembes is because they're in the eastern, Bembes are mostly in the eastern part of the country, and the eastern part of the country is so violent that when they say, well, we're going to repatriate you, and you say you're a Bembe, it's like, okay, well, that's out, because you can't send them back, you know. So that's part of why, you know, there's so many of them, to our benefit, needless to say. So these are some of the camps that they fled to. Like I say, Jean-Claude, or Bembe as I knew him, ended up in one camp, and Justine ended up another, and then of course it becomes quite a process to, you know, get back to your family. And then once you get back to your family, then it becomes a process of getting out of the refugee camp. Innocent, I'd like you to tell us what happened with you specifically, where you were and how you ended up in America, and how you ended up, first of all, how you ended up in Kenya.
Yeah, war broke out when I was in college. The college was like 100 miles away from my home village where my parents and my family were. So here in America, when I talk about 100 miles, it's a distance you can drive maybe 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah.
But because of road conditions back in Africa, that's a distance which can take 6 to 10 hours to drive. Yeah. So basically, when war broke out, my family had to flee. Where I was in college, I had also to flee to take a different direction. My family was somewhere very close here in the western shores of Lake Tanganyika, so they crossed the lake into Tanzania. I was somewhere far in another city up here called Bukavu. So the country that was close was Rwanda, from where I was, or Uganda, which is up there. Now, it all started very early in the morning. It was around 4 or 5 a.m. when we had gunshots all over. Those rebels had come, and their tactic was to come, especially in a place like a college. They see where there are strong young men, they will encircle that and kidnap all those young men and enroll them by force to join their ranks and become soldiers. So if you don't like to do that, all you have to expect is to be killed. So you better comply and join them, become one of the fighters. Now, that's what happened. Then I joined a group of people who were fleeing. So we crossed into Uganda. Yeah, we walked about 2 days into jungle to reach the Uganda border, then cross in. Yeah, 2 days in the jungle, sleeping just in the jungle. Sometimes we will climb on the tree to avoid the snakes and so on. You spend the whole night up on a tree. Yeah, so into Uganda, then we reached Uganda somewhere right here, Nakivale refugee camp. I did not go to the camp in Nakivale. Instead, I decided to go to the capital city of Uganda, which is Kampala. Because I felt I'm from college, I have education, I can go in the city and find a job instead of languishing in the refugee camp. So that's what I did. When I went to the capital city, I couldn't find employment because of the restrictions. I did not have a proper documentation. They would ask me a work permit because I'm not a Ugandan citizen. So if you are a foreigner, you are supposed to show a work permit issued by the government that allows you to work in that country, which I didn't have. So life became difficult. I spent there about 4 to 5 months, and I said, no, here life is difficult. Then with my other friends, we decided to move on from Uganda into Kenya which you can see next there, moving eastward. Right, so we arrived in Nairobi, which is somewhere there. And fortunately, I managed to get a job because there was an organization which was looking for interpreters who could speak French and English. By then I knew very little English, and that English was enough for me to translate in French and English, English and French. So that's how I ended in Nairobi. And in Nairobi, life was not also easy. And the government decided to take us to the camp. They said, refugees are not supposed to live in the capital city. You belong to the camp. That's the policy of all the government. Once you register as a refugee, you are not supposed to live outside the refugee camp. So I went there in a refugee camp, and when I saw life was so difficult, for instance, just as I described here, you live in a tent, no job opportunity. I had to cut short my education because of war, and I saw that there was no prospect for me to continue my education. Yeah, with that in mind, I spent maybe a couple of years in that refugee camp. I decided again to come back to Nairobi to try my luck again, trying to find employment.
So you had to actually flee the camp?
Yes.
You just said, I'm out of here.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's why I had to flee the camp, because to me, as a young man back then, I felt really this is very tough for me. I was alone. I didn't have a family then, because I fled in a different country and my family in a different country.
Right.
Yeah. So life in the camp was too harsh for me. I decided to flee the camp and then came back again to Nairobi, tried my luck, I did all kind of jobs, working in a construction site, and then I sometimes also worked as a cleaner somewhere in a public toilet within the capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did all that. And then finally, after some years, I was employed in a college to teach French language, because Kenya being an English-speaking country, and they needed people who speak French maybe to teach and so on. Yeah, that's the work now I did for about 10 years.
Okay.
So in total, I spent 15 years in Kenya until the opportunity of resettlement came in 2018. But the process is a very long process. It takes, on average, 4 to 5 years. Once the UNHCR identifies you for resettlement, the second thing they do is they identify a resettlement country. So for instance, they say, okay, they identify the United States. Now I sign a certain form which they send to the embassy of the US in Kenya to say, we need this person to be resettled to your country. So the decision now lies with the embassy whether to reject or to accept that request or application.
You accept or reject, or these embassy accepts?
The embassy.
Okay.
Yeah. The UN will just submit that
Right.
application on your behalf.
Okay.
So now you wait. Once the decision comes out, you are given that decision which comes from the embassy that you have been accepted or you have been rejected.
What kind of day is that when you find out you're accepted?
It will take between 6 months and 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good day, though.
Yes. Once you are accepted, now the process will start, where you go through health checks,
Yeah.
security checks. As you know, the State Department will send people there to interview you and so on, the DHS and so on, all these departments in the US, they will always send representatives there before now you start the process of the journey of coming to the US. So in total, it will take about between 3 to 5 years
Wow.
for you to land in this country.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, in the case of Jean-Claude, he's inside the refugee camp with his friends, and this is the way he tells the story. He says, while in the refugee camp, several of us heard about a Bible correspondence course being offered through Christadelphian missionaries from South Africa. After the completion of the course, we received a visit from some brothers and sisters from South Africa. Upon giving a true confession of our faith, 4 of us were baptized into the saving name of Jesus Christ on October 1st, 1999, forming the first ever Christadelphian ecclesia in Mozambique. I also joyfully report that my wife, Sister Justine, thank you, who also had taken the Bible correspondence course, was baptized on April 27, 2002. Well, a couple of points about this. First of all, this is the first ever Christadelphian ecclesia in Mozambique. And according to the Tidings magazine last November, there are more Christadelphians today in Mozambique than in any other country in the world, and this is the first one. There are 24,000 Christadelphians in Mozambique. So there are more there than anywhere, and this is the first ecclesia. And this is our brother Jean-Claude right there as part of that first ecclesia. So when you talk about, and Innocent and I talked about it, Jean-Claude and I talked about it, I've talked to Justine about it, I've talked to Ascendi about it, and this is the fascinating aspect of this. So you've just seen a compilation of what it is to live and die and survive in the Congo and the culture and all those differences. When we started talking about why did you become a Christadelphian, and understand inside the refugee camps there aren't just Christadelphians. You know, there's Seventh-day Adventists, there's Mormons, there's all these different religions, and they're all missionaries, and they're all working hard, understandably so, to help the people there and to bring them into their faith. And so I said to Brother Innocent, why did you join the Christadelphians? Why did you choose the Christadelphians? And what he said was, it just made sense. Now understand, I was born and raised in a very comfortable, I wouldn't have called it comfortable until I heard his, but a very comfortable surrounding in Worcester as a good Irish Catholic boy. And when I learned the Bible, the thing that clicked with me was, it just made sense. When I talked to Ascendi about why he ended up studying with the Christadelphians, and actually he ended up getting baptized in America, he said the message just made sense. So the message itself doesn't actually change. We're all here for the same reason. Now he could have chosen, Justine and Bembe, they could have chosen probably the Mormons or the Seventh-day Adventists, or whoever. They all have a certain message, they all have a certain attraction to them. I know somebody that joined the church because they loved the choir. They were just looking for a church with a good choir. Nothing wrong with a good choir. But it comes down to the message every single time. And it's the same message. So he's teaching a class one building over that we all wish we could hear because we know it's the same message. We've had brothers come here to the Bible school from South Africa, from India, from Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, and they walk in the door, even Canada, even the South, even Boston, and they walk up to the podium and they start to give the message, and you go, I know exactly what he's talking about. I might not know what he's delivering, but I know where it's coming from. It's the same message, and it attracts whoever it is that God is calling to that message. And it doesn't matter whether you're just a slug from Worcester or if you're somebody who has just survived or is in the process, in the midst of surviving a horrific situation, and you hear the message and you go, that's the right message. So we should never play around, and I'm speaking for Brother Innocent, I know, we should never play around with the message. Because that's what we've been called to represent from wherever you come from. And that's how this ecclesia formed in Mozambique, because I know this guy was very dedicated to the message. This is the organization that does so much work to In the refugee camps, obviously, if you live in the refugee camp, you wish they did more, but without them, you would have nothing. Without the UNHRC, there would be no repatriation or no immigration. There would be no refugee camps for them to flee to. So if there's no refugee camps to flee to and you went into Tanzania, Tanzania would just pick you up and send you back, right?
Yeah, definitely.
No doubt about it. And back is death. And that is not to paint the refugee camps as anything better than what we see. So this is the organization that does so much work. And obviously, the brethren in South Africa have done incredible work over the years in the refugee camps to teach people the truth and to baptize them into the saving name of Jesus Christ. The UNHRC brings them here to America, and then what happens in America is they find their brethren. And they find their brethren and they say, I'm here. And then it's our job to incorporate them into our ecclesias, into society, into everyday life. And it has, I can tell you in Boston without a shadow of a doubt, and I can see Steve nodding because I know it's true in Granite State, it gives new life to an ecclesia. Carol talked about the Iranians in Sisters Tea today giving new life to the UK Christadelphians. The UK Christadelphians had a conference several years ago to say, what are we going to do about our community? It is dying. Next thing you know, influx, thousands and thousands of Iranians. It ain't dying anymore. Same for us. We have been incredibly blessed to have these families arrive here. We are also incredibly moved and humbled by what you've had to go through to get here. And not just that, but we know you go through it as well because you have family right back there in the refugee camps or in the Congo, living in these oppressive, incredibly difficult situations. And as Andy says, pray for these people. Pray for our loved ones back in the Congo, both those who are Christadelphians and those who are not. Because it's a country that's not getting better, sadly enough. And the refugees will probably keep on coming. And the refugee camps aren't getting better. I believe what Ascendi is saying was that the refugee camps are getting worse, not better. In fact, right now they say it's better not to be in a refugee camp, but to be out of the refugee camp like Innocent was than in the camp. Because life is so horrific inside the refugee camps. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody have any questions or thoughts they want to share about that? Steve?
Yeah, everybody can probably hear me.
Yeah, it's also, we got Zoom people on as well, so.
Yeah, so this UN organization, I read an article just a couple weeks ago concerning, and it's something that we need to keep in mind looking forward, because the organization is having great difficulty feeding the people in the refugee camps because of not only COVID, but the global, whatever you want to say.
Supply chain, yeah.
Exactly, the supply chain issues. They're actually, in many of the camps, cutting the rations in half at this point.
Yeah.
And with no
Warning.
rosy thing looking down, no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I mean, we have ourselves wonderful organizations that will help, the CBMA, and so again, I just wanted to mention that things are only getting more difficult for our brothers and sisters, and I've been in correspondence with several brethren concerning what's going on in Tanzania and in Burundi, and I was told, and I'm not trying to contradict what you said, but I was told that it's actually, we have brothers and sisters who are much worse off outside the camp than in, because they don't even have that rations that they've been giving. They're actually living hand to mouth and going unimaginable places to try to find food.
Right.
So it's something, again, that we just need to keep in mind.
Sure, sure.
I just wondered what those letters stand. I know it's United United Nations, what's the H?
High Commissioner for Refugees.
High Commission for Refugees.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Innocent, talk a little bit about two things. I have a question for, I don't know the time, but nice job. No, good, good work on your part. Two questions. When you get that notice from the UNHRC that they say to you, okay, you're going to America, what does that feel like?
Definitely there's a kind of, I can say, a sigh of relief that in the end I'm living this kind of life I went through all these years. Yeah, because that letter is when you get it that you have been accepted. Now maybe within the next 2 or 3 or 5 years you are going to America. It's no secret that everyone in Africa, being poor as it is, although not poor that there are no resources, but it's a man-made poverty, I can say, an artificial poverty, because everything is there. So once you get that, you kind of say, yeah, definitely now I'm going to America. Now I'm going to the land of opportunity, where I will have the opportunity to work, because there you don't have that opportunity to work.
Right. You're given the card that says, yes, you can work here?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you know that I will have the opportunity, all my children will have opportunity to go to good school and get a good education. So you have all that in prospect that, yes, although life will not be as difficult as it is there,
Yeah.
you know that I will have so many opportunities that I will not get here in Africa.
So when you came here and you've landed,
Yeah.
and now you're here, and I know the UNHRC gives you some clue of a job. I remember Jean-Claude was at the airport, and they give you some place to live. How did you then reach out to the Christadelphians? Was it Morristown, and say I'm here? Or how did that come about?
Yeah. Personally, I landed in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, and then I was taken to Delaware State. And I tried to search through the internet to see if there was a Christadelphian ecclesia within Delaware State. I couldn't find any. And when I tried to look around, I saw the nearest ecclesia was in New Jersey, which is neighboring state. And it was like 45 to 50 minutes drive from where we were. Yeah, and I didn't have any contact of anyone in New Jersey, in Morristown Ecclesia. The only contact I had, there was a sister in Canada called Esther Worrell. Maybe some here know her.
Esther?
Oh,
She's at your meeting, yeah?
yeah, she's originally she's from Guyana, but I think she lived all her life in Canada. So I wrote an email to her because I did not have for so many years
Right.
back in Kenya. But she has never been to Kenya, but we only got to know each other through some other means. And when I wrote to her, she had also known some people in New York. I think the Ozone Park Ecclesia, she sent an email to people in New York, and those people in New York said, no, Delaware is too far from New York.
Right.
I tried to find the nearest ecclesia. It happened to be the Morristown Ecclesia. Yeah, that's how the correspondence went.
You know what I didn't ask you is, how did you find out about the Christadelphians?
Okay, so that goes way back in my life in college. I was born in a Roman Catholic family. I grew up Catholic. And when I was in college, that's when I met a young man who happened to be a Christadelphian. And he was there sitting with 2 or 3 other of his friends. They were discussing about the Bible I was just passing by. And when I saw that heated discussion between them, and they had a copy of the Bible, and it was everything he was telling them, he would open a Bible verse to prove whatever he was telling them. But for us as Roman Catholic back then, it is very difficult, and I'm quite sure I'm not the only one. There are many others here, maybe who are Catholics, even to have a copy of the Bible in the house. The Catholic, they will not have that. Or they go to the church during the Mass, when the Bible is read there, the priest or whoever who is there, whatever he says, that's all. Yeah, and when they were discussing, I happened to be interested by the discussion. I just went like a get crusher. And I said, could I join this discussion? And say, yes, why not, come. So I went there and I asked him, which church do you go to? And he said, Christadelphian. And that was the first time I even heard that word. I'd never heard about Christadelphia. That word itself was a very strange word to me.
Right, it was to all of us.
I asked, is it a church or what is it? He said, yes.
It's Christians from Philadelphia.
Yeah, so that's how
Yep.
it started. And the following day, I had a one-on-one with that guy.
Yep.
And he explained a lot of things that even some verses I had never heard myself during my life. And I said, no, I don't think you can convince me that easily. And he said, yes, let's sit down and let's discuss. Whatever you say you believe, prove it through the Bible, and also whatever I believe I will show you in the Bible. And we had a second meeting, and I was kind of overwhelmed because I was just discussing and showing my faith, whatever I believed, but I did not have tangible proof or to give some verses to prove whatever I believe. For instance, in Catholic, when we say, Virgin Mary, Mother of God, pray for us, and so on. And I could not prove that Mary is the Mother of God, but because only I was told that. But and he went on to prove that, no, Jesus is not God, and he showed many, many verses. And when he asked me to prove some verses, I did not have any.
Right.
Yeah, that's how. So when war broke out, we went our separate ways. I never saw him since.
Wow.
Only when I came to Kenya, I remembered that word Christadelphian.
Yep.
So when I tried to find a church in Kenya, I went and I Googled. Fortunately, I got contact of Christadelphians within Nairobi.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got in touch with them, and they invited me to the ecclesia. That's when it happened.
Very interesting. And Steve?
How did you meet Brother Brian Lloyd?
Yes, Brian Lloyd, I don't know if he's around
I don't
here.
think he's here tonight.
Oh,
I think
okay.
they went back home.
I think it was in 2012, 2013. He and his family, they stayed in Kenya for the whole year. He used to teach in a high school sponsored by Agape in Action. Yeah, so the school was far from Nairobi, the capital city. It was in a village where he used to stay. So for maybe once in a month, he would come to Nairobi with the family and join us in Nairobi Ecclesia. That's how I met him, yeah.
He also knows Brother Phil Lawrence and Sister Kate.
Yeah, Philip Lawrence and Kate Lawrence, they were part of the Linkman team. They used to go to Kenya maybe 2 times every year, and we would meet. I was part of the arranging team that would set up the itinerary of the ecclesias they will visit, and I would go with them all around Kenya. Yeah, that's how I knew about Philip Lawrence.
Quelle heure est-il? That's the extent of my French, pretty much. Did I get time? Okay. Got a question or comment in the back?
My name is Bengo Pilele. I'm from Baltimore, Ecclesia, with my 6 children here. But I don't know speak a very good English. I will speak in French. My brother will help me to translate. Bon. Je vais intervenir un peu sur ce qui prévaut dans mon pays.
Yeah, I would like to add something about what is going on in my country.
Bon, je ne vais pas parler beaucoup parce que ceux qui ont parlé avant moi ont tout parlé. Moi, je ne fais que compléter un peu.
I will not take too much time because my brother there has already talked about everything, but I have something additional to add to that, to whatever he has already talked about.
Je commencerai à dire à propos de mon pays. Donc, la guerre a commencé à sévir mon pays en 1996.
Yeah, about my country, the war started in 1996 as it has been presented here.
Là, beaucoup de personnes avaient fui vers la Tanzanie, vers le pays limitrophe du Congo.
So many people, thousands of people fled the country and went into the neighboring countries.
On était beaucoup à fuir. Et bien sûr, on a réussi à fuir, mais quand on était arrivé dans des camps de réfugiés, beaucoup d'autres sont morts par des épidémies telles que le choléra, les épidémies comme le choléra, les crises cardiaques, etc.
Yeah, so maybe to add to that is the statistics of those people who died. Those statistics do not include many other people who died in the camps because of the bad situations in the camp. For instance, epidemics like cholera, malaria, typhoid, they killed many other people because of bad conditions in the camp.
Et nous qui sommes ici aujourd'hui, si nous sommes ici aujourd'hui, c'est par grâce de Dieu. Nous ne sommes pas intelligents, nous ne sommes pas très malins, nous ne sommes pas très expérimentés pour dire que nous continuons, nous sommes en survie aujourd'hui, mais c'est par grâce de Dieu que nous sommes ici.
Yeah, and I can say it's just by God's grace that we are here today. We are not better educated or more intelligent than those who did not have that opportunity or the chance to be here. I can say just by the grace of God that we find ourselves here.
Et autre chose que je vais vous signaler est que dans mon pays jusqu'ici, les gens continuent toujours à être tués, à être décapités, à être massacrés, jusqu'à ce n'est pas fini. Et on n'a pas encore la lueur de paix. On ne sait pas quand l'issue de cette guerre, on ne sait pas quand ça va.
And my biggest worry is that up to this day, as we speak, people are still being murdered, killed in my country, and there's no solution in the near future as the situation keeps getting worse and worse.
Bon, pour finir, je présente mes félicitations, mes gratitudes envers le gouvernement américain et envers vous les frères qui êtes ici aujourd'hui parce que vous nous faites du bien. Et c'est bien, le bien que vous nous faites nous aide à survivre sur le sol américain.
Yeah, only I'd like to present my gratitude to brethren of the Christadelphian community and also to the American government that gave us that opportunity of being resettled here.
Et je vous demanderai toujours de continuer à œuvrer de cette façon-là, c'est-à-dire de nous faire le bien, de nous aider pour que nous puissions oublier un peu ce que nous avons vécu dans notre pays.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to our Christadelphian community, and I will urge us to keep on praying for our country, and we are very grateful for whatever the support you are giving us here. It's very important to us because it helps us even try to put behind whatever we went through and focus on the Word of God.
Vraiment, nous sommes reconnaissants, très reconnaissants de tout ce que vous nous faites.
Indeed, we are very, very, very grateful.
Que l'Éternel, le bon Dieu, vous aide à avoir beaucoup de choses dans vos services, dans vos travaux, dans tout ce que vous faites.
May the Lord continue to bless you in whatever you do, whatever you put your hands on, let it be blessed because you give us that support and we appreciate it.
Nous sommes des pauvres, nous n'avons pas à vous payer parce que nous n'avons rien. Mais l'Éternel, dans le royaume des cieux, vous fera beaucoup pour ce que vous faites aujourd'hui.
Yeah, we do not know if we are in any position to pay back whatever you are giving us. It's too much for us, and all we can say is we are so grateful.
Merci, 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 merci.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Et nous tous.
Thank you very much, brother. I just want to add two things to that. We've been paid back in spades, just so you know, just by having you here. And also, I don't know what's more impressive, the fact of everything that you said or the fact that you could hear what he was saying. That was really impressive. Yeah, Tom.
Just one question. What more can we do? And
Correct.
maybe we don't need the answer now, but you know, maybe we can, as a committee, send the sign-up sheets. How did the Bible school go? What kind of questions do brothers and sisters have? What kind of input? I've heard some very great questions, and some have been to Africa that are at the Bible school. What more can we do, and what can we do for your children, especially your unbaptized children, who are now facing challenges assimilating with this different challenges than Africa, that, you know, with the world and this American culture that's trying to influence our children and your children, because we have the same challenges, trust me, all of us. And we'd like to know what more we can do as a community to assist you all with the gospel message. That's what it's all about. Your story, Roman Catholic, same story as him, same story as me, same story as Jim, and many, many others, Jim and others. And the same story, different challenges. This is far more than we could overcome. So, but we want to do more, and many are doing more.
No, it's a great question, Tom. Like I say, when the idea came that, you know, having the Swahili brethren come here with a teacher, we all just went absolutely. And for two reasons, because we love our Congolese brethren, but also because we want to have the opportunity to do whatever we can for them or for you know, all of our brethren. This was just an opportunity to be able to say, yeah, we can make this happen. It took some work, but you know, what more can we do is a great question. And I think Tom's right. I don't know if it's a question we can answer, you know, with 2 seconds left in this meeting, but it's something that we should definitely address, and we can certainly address it through this Bible school. So thanks for that question, Tom. Steve, you have something else?
I just wanted to address your question about that. If you want to know what to do, become personally involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Personally involved.
It's a great point. Anything else before we close? Well, thank you, Brother Innocent. Oh, there's more? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's why I tried to move as fast as I could, but I couldn't get away with it.
I only have one. I want to just let everyone know that Brother Benoit Mukendi is in is there now in Eastern Congo. And he just texted me that he said, pray for me. Yeah. So I don't know if it's the unrest in Goma. There is unrest in Goma. I mean, the people there are having difficulties. There is an ecclesia there. But I just think we should include Brother Benoit in our prayers. He lives in Canada. He's a member of the Toronto West Ecclesia. And was delayed in visiting because of COVID, but he's there now, and he's having challenges. So. Okay,
thank you. All right, well, thank you again to Brother Innocent. We really appreciate you sharing your story with us, and to Justine and Jean-Claude and all the rest of you. It's been a great education for us, and I think Tommy's right. What more can we do for each other is what we should probably take from this.